Before we begin the talk, I want to mention something I forgot last night, which may be important for people who are here for the first time. During a block of sitting and meetings, I take a break and either walk here with the people who are in the sitting room, or else if people are still sitting, I walk quietly through the sitting room, standing wherever someone is sitting for a while, quietly. This is not done in order to check on people, look at their postures, intuit what they are about at this moment. All of these interpretations may go on in the mind. Is she taking my vibrations? Somebody once asked. I need to take a break to talk for 2 hours, and this stretches a lot. And to have this time for being quiet myself and standing, being quietly with people in here is for me a marvelous thing. Quietly with the people, with the trees, the cicadas and the buzzing fly. To say nothing. Not making anything out of oneself or the other. If one doesn't make anything out of oneself or the other, then our eternal separations and divisions disappear. By making out of it, of course, I mean thinking about it, evaluating, judging, testing, comparing. Maybe we should get into the talk. This is the first talk of the August 89 7-day retreat in Springwater. The first topic of every talk at the beginning of every retreat, be it a long or short retreat, one in Springwater or someplace else, is to talk about listening to a talk. And to talk together, to listen together to what is being said. I don't feel I'm talking at you or to you, I'm talking and listening at the same time. Not listening, how do I sound, how did I say that, but listening. Listening and looking. And how does one listen to a talk like this? Recently, we were someplace where I noticed many people had notebooks with pencils poised to start taking things down. Sometimes where I go, things are called a course. I'm taking this course, people say, or a seminar. But this isn't that. It's not a course, it's not a seminar, it's not a lecture. To be taking notes in, if one needs to hear again what was said, this is being recorded and tapes are for sale. And if one is used to taking notes, one can find out that the mind is much more open and with what is being said if it does not also have to engage in note-taking, trying to discern what is more essential, what is less essential. What does one want to remember? And of course, as one writes it down, the talk has proceeded and one hasn't heard it all. It's very difficult to write, listen discriminatorily and freely at the same time. So, this is not for taking mental notes. It's for looking and listening together openly without constant reference to what one knows already or what one wants to hear. And if these references come up, as the brain does, it displays what one knows on some internal screen, can one notice that process and abstain from going on with it? Noticing again that as one compares to what one thinks she has said other times, or what someone else has said on a similar topic, or what one remembers having read, or what one would like to hear, as these movements of thought take place in the brain and body, the body responds to every movement of thought. The listening is no longer open, free, receptive. One may remember something anyways. The brain is registering. But is one registering with the motive, the purpose to remember? Or is it just registering naturally? Often people tell me, I was really listening to the talk quite intensely, but I couldn't tell you right now what you said. And one may find out for oneself that the more one is with this moment, attentively, intensely listening, looking, opening, the less is the brain recording into memory. It's always this not quite being with something, having an angle, a point of view. Then there's a need to remember. Right at this time, let me say, if there's something that does not make sense as it is said, as it is put, you feel she's not going far enough, or I don't understand what she said, I would like to hear it again, then as it occurs to you after the talk, jot it down and bring it up in a meeting. There's enough time in the 10 to 15 minutes that we have, if we have 4 meetings, to go over something, not to go over it, to start it afresh, to inquire together from scratch, from the beginning. Because what is said here, and I'm very emphatic about that, is not said as word of authority, word of truth, to be taken as that. Unquestioned, unquestioningly. The things are brought up for looking at and questioning together, wondering about. I may say something and sound very certain about it, very strong about it, and yet no matter how strong I sound about it, I will look at it again any time that you bring up a question about it. This is not authority speaking, expertise making any moment take time out and question anew. What do we really mean by this? We get so rutty with our thoughts and images and concepts and language that after a while we just use it without knowing, what does it really refer to? What do we really mean when we say the word listening? All previous definitions. They may come up, I can look at them, but one can suspend them and look directly if it's possible. Some things we can't look at directly. Something may be happening someplace else, in someone else, in a foreign country. But one can always look into oneself afresh and look around oneself. To the sky and to the ground, into the distance and closely, and into someone else's eyes as one talks with each other. Necessary to come up with an answer immediately. That's the danger. The brain immediately comes up with answers. We've been trained to do this since almost the day we started babbling. Parents have answers, older brothers and sisters have answers, and of course teachers have answers. But there is a different kind of questioning that does not look for an immediate answer, but that opens up the whole field and wonders. And if an answer comes up, is it really so? The mind does never need to stop wondering. Wondering is a beautiful word, isn't it? It has in it the questioning aspect and the sense of wonder at meeting anew what we have gotten so used to, so accustomed to, maybe so indifferent to, or so numbed to. I can see in our grandchildren, more in our granddaughter, she's younger, still the wonder about words and the power of words, which she will say and relish, savor the effect of words. At times she'd just cuddle up and say, "Grandma," but she was hearing herself say that, and there was a sense of wonder at the word, and maybe this person that this word refers to, and the person responding. It was a marvelous thing. And then we get used to the words. And they have to be put into worksheets. Our grandson brought a whole thick book of worksheets that he had to fill out for school while he was having a vacation. Put words into blank spaces. He was doing it, reminding him a little bit. He'd pull it out. one point to wonder about this whole process, the very fact that it is happening. And what are the thoughts all about? Not just, oh, I'm thinking again, or labeling it, thinking. What am I thinking about all the time? The moment I wonder about that, I'm already not completely caught up in the content of it. I may look at the content and wonder about it. So, is there some clarity between us, among us, that there is no speaking here from authority? I've done a lot of it. With great passion. Passionately interested in sharing it, but not in proclaiming some kind of to mouth, to remember, to quote. We're challenging each other to look and listen for ourselves and to find out whether what is said, maybe with great emphasis, is really so. Not just because it is said with great emphasis, therefore it must be true. Somebody wouldn't be so emphatic if it wasn't true. A person has done this for a while, so there must be something to it. One can't assume that of anyone. Not of anyone. Has to find out for oneself. And this capacity is in all of us to look for ourselves, to discover for ourselves. What goes on in the mind, in the body, and all around us. The world of insects and trees and water, sky, clouds and earth, and the world of human beings, of whom each one of us is a representative. What makes us react so quickly with anger or fear, or sadness, or defensiveness? So quickly, as though there was no gap between what was said or thought and the fear or the anger, the sadness or the defensiveness. And yet, as one does this work and wonders about these gapless reactions which set in so quickly, as one wonders about it and gives more and more attention to it, one finds it does not have to be without a gap. There can be a pausing. As one is about to get hurt or angry, saddened or whatever, watching it, listening to it. Giving attention, being aware, without knowing the why or wherefores, the results, just listening now. And not just how anger arises, but what maintains it, what sustains it. Anger, fear, or sadness. One emotion may be picked out, but it holds for all of them. What maintains our sadness or anger or fear? If the thought that elicits it or the memory, it may not be a verbal thought, it may be a visual or physical memory. As soon as that association has happened, that triggering of fear, which is also a remembered emotion, a remembered physical response to remembered physical, mental stimulus. As soon as that triggering has taken place and the body now manifests what we call fear or anger, if one pays complete attention to it, it does not sustain itself. It does not maintain itself. It's immediately seen the physical symptoms sort of slowly peter out, diminish, dissolve, which isn't what usually happens. Something feeds this process, keeps it going. What is that? Can one give attention? Is one interested? What keeps sadness or longing, desire or anger, fear going? And not know it ahead of time. I've heard her say that on a tape, or someone else has said this too. It's this or that. No, to watch it as it happens in oneself, which is all human beings. The content of the fear or anger may vary. What instigated it, the past experiences vary, but the process is the same. Memory, thought causing physical upset, and physical upset causing new thoughts. Must be something fearful around here, because I feel afraid. So may go the thoughts. Maybe not that logical. It's more hazy, more implicit. And then, of course, all the thoughts. I shouldn't be afraid. I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be sad. Can one see those arise and carry on? See them functioning and creating a conflict with a state of anger or fear or sadness? The moment the thought arises, I shouldn't feel this way, there's a conflict, isn't there? The body is manifesting something, thought has produced something, and now the thought, I shouldn't feel that way. It doesn't make any sense, does it? But we feel that way, we think that way, and we create conflict in ourselves all the time. And then maybe listening to a talk like this, observing a thought arousing fear, and then the thought, I shouldn't feel fear, and then feeling the conflict, and then the thought, I shouldn't have conflict. We always add more I shoulds and I should nots, because this is our deep, deep, ancient, century or maybe millennia-old conditioning. Thou shalt and thou shalt not. Deeply, religiously sanctioned. And deeply religiously sanctioned means with fear of punishment, condemnation, promise of hell or heaven. So, it sounds so radical, and it's seems such a radical approach to observe what is going on without thou shalt or thou shalt not. One can be sure that it isn't working someplace very deeply. Just because the thoughts aren't on the surface doesn't mean they can't be very deeply implied, implicit, hidden, concealed. But just because something is concealed does not mean it can't be revealed. If there's the interest and the openness, then the concealed and hidden stuff bubbles up. One may have been so used to looking away, repressing or distracting oneself. But that one can also become aware of the escapes, the repressive stance. Don't want to touch it, don't want to hear about it, don't want to feel it. Why not? Why not feel something? Why not feel pain and hurt? As for the first time, with the mind there, open, not escaping, not thinking it shouldn't be like this, or I must overcome this. But what is it? How long, after all, how long can we walk around alone and with each other with these deep buried hurts and fears? We've done it for ages. And our overt actions may to a large extent be motivated by these age-old deep-seated fears and hurts. Someone asked in a meeting, well, what do you mean by inquiring into something? What do you mean by questioning? I find as I'm questioning, my mind, my thoughts get more and more and more involved. Is that what you mean? I don't think this is what you mean, the person said. In getting in touch with hurt, I'm not talking about analyzing, interpreting. It's touching, being in touch with what's there and wondering about it. What is it? And then not look for an answer, but allowing the question to be opening so that things will come up on their own. And they do. Maybe not at the moment we're wondering. Maybe at some other time. One may ask a question. Is this what I'm afraid of? Is such and such what I'm afraid of? But not yes or no, but wondering. And let the whole condition, let the memory and the present condition speak in its own language. And one may feel, no, yeah, maybe, but that's not the whole thing. So what really is it? And then be quiet again, not scan for answers, but be there with the living movement of thinking and emoting and feeling and repressing and so forth. Escaping and seeing a moment of escaping and not going on with it. Because one realizes in the escape away from something, there can't be the being with something. And the being with something may be painful, hurtful, upsetting, making one nervous, unsure, insecure. What is all of that, what I just labeled right now? What is insecurity or nervousness? The word makes a lot of sense, we've used it a lot. But what does it refer to in this present state of being? Feeling insecure and afraid. What are all the responses that come out of it? Wanting to hold on to something. Afraid of looking any further for fear of losing some ground. What ground? What are we grounded in? Our thoughts and ideas about ourselves and the world and each other? If one looks carefully, that may be all that reveals itself. What seems such a safe and solid foundation is thoughts and ideas and concepts, beliefs that we've imbibed with mother's milk or the bottle. We didn't get mother's milk. We're so full of beliefs, not just religious beliefs. Can one open up that book of beliefs? Even become aware that how much one believes. I believe I'm this, I believe this is like that. People ask me, what do you believe? What are your beliefs? I usually say I don't have any, but how can I be sure? I may have all kinds of beliefs which I'm not even aware of. But if one questions the whole thing, then awareness sheds light. The very interest, the very questioning is the generator of attention and light. If there's no fear to face whatever comes up, and no idea that without these beliefs I can't exist, I have to have something to hold on to. That's a belief. That's an assumption. How do we know that we have to have something to hold on to? Some idea about myself, about the world, about God, about human beings, that they're good or that they're intrinsically sinful. Why should we believe anything? Just because we believe that without it we will what? Be falling apart or something? We do fall apart because we have all these contradictory beliefs. Conflict among them. Not knowing what to believe. People say that I'm so confused I don't know anymore what to believe. That could be a very good starting point. But usually we think about the fact that we don't know what to believe, and that very thought creates anxiety. Can one notice that? How thinking about our state of being right at this moment, not just being with it, but putting it into words and thinking about it, may create anger or fear, anxiety, self-pity. Not the state itself, that can come and go very quickly and lightly, but the moment we think about it, represent it to ourselves in certain usually loaded terms. Loaded means it evokes emotions. Poor me, or I have a right to be angry here, or how much I have to suffer. So, can one listen in to all the things we say to ourselves about ourselves, and of course, about others? Our relationship with others is much lighter and easier if we don't constantly put into words how they are. The moment the mind starts that, then one gets really stuck in feeling anger about the person, or disdain, or attraction. And it's away from being moving together in a changing life. Life is constantly changing. Our moods are changing, our insights. A new insight comes. A new insight may come to a person, and in that person may drop something. But if I remember how he or she was before then, and I hold to that image, cast that person into that image, and therefore respond to that person in terms of my memory, person may not feel that way anymore, or would not react like that again, or respond like that. But I won't see it because I'm so stuck in my idea verbal or pictorial or combined, about this person. What she is, what he is, or was, or did to me. So can one begin to get a feel for all this, insight into it? Thought, verbiage about myself, about each other, can create walls around myself and between each other. May not necessarily be so. There can be talking about oneself which may clarify something. If one doesn't hold on to the words but goes to the root of what one is from moment to moment. But usually we hold on to the verbiage. It becomes a treasure, one of our collector's items. What we have said about ourselves, found out and learned about ourselves and each other. You see, there is no need to collect it, to save it, because collections collect dust. And they hide and conceal the fresh moment of being alone and together. Let me say, for the benefit of people who haven't been here before, that during a talk it's quite all right to change your posture. We've yesterday mentioned during a round of sitting to avoid doing this if at all possible. It's not a rigid rule, but during a talk, if your legs fall asleep or feel uncomfortable, then please do change your posture. And find as comfortable, I think we talked about, find as comfortable a seating arrangement as possible. Find rest before the talk if possible, if you're tired. Makes a lot of difference whether one comes very tired to a talk or has had a good nap. The other thing I wanted to say is that usually the topics for the talks from which we start are things that people bring up in meetings, questions or comments. In using them, try to be aware of not revealing who said what. It's not to expose someone, but to share in common concerns, because what one person brings up is usually someplace or sometime or other everyone's concern, because we are so similar in our concerns and problems. And by doing this, there's an element of participation that emerges. If what was brought up in a talk needs further exploration or clarification, then again the meeting is there to do this, and may jot it down and bring it up in the talk again to clarify what wasn't said clearly, or to carry further, or to start over, whatever. which now can bring the problem, because somehow or other we are problem producers. I don't have a question, so I should have a question. Now, I'm not saying at all that people should have questions. If you would like to come to a meeting but don't have a question, then how does one come to a meeting? People tell me that. They come feeling somewhat bad about themselves. Down on oneself that one doesn't have an interesting question like these other people seem to have. So can that be illumined? That movement of mind? As far as a retreat goes, I do not expect you to bring anything to a meeting. And I don't expect you to come if you don't want to come. That's up to each one. If there's no question, then we can sit quietly. Maybe something will come up. With you, with me. That does happen sometimes. A person says, I have no question. After 8 minutes of sitting quietly, a long question comes up. And then we may have to go some overtime. Or save it for the next time. So can one observe impartially, as people are doing, sitting there in the solarium, the thoughts that go through the mind, the shoulds and shouldn'ts. People have mentioned to me that I like to bring a good question because I like to see your eyes light up with pleasure over the new question. And in this way you're conditioning your students or your non-students to bring questions to be agreeable to you. It may look this way, there may be an aspect of it. If there's an interesting question, of course my eyes may light up. I love interesting questions, but if you don't have a question, doesn't mean I don't love you. That there are favorite ones also. But it's good to bring these things up, to bring them into awareness. Is one doing that? Is one trying to manipulate? Because that's what's going on in these kind of relationships. Teacher, student, guide, or disciple, or therapist, and client, or patient. Subtle manipulations, controlling each other or exploiting each other subtly. And it takes really a lot of honest looking, openness to these subtle movements, not to go with them. In both people alike, no one is exempt from this, because we're all alike. We all want to be loved, we all want to have power, want to control, want to be in charge, or want to be the one who is taken care of, or the victim. And may use any opportunity, any relationship offering itself to go with these maybe habits, already established habits. So, we're saying again, can there be light on the subtlest of habits? Not I should or shouldn't. We're just throwing it all out as a big question. Not assuming that some of these habits I need for survival. Not to assume anything. That's maybe an entirely different kind of survival, way of living, free from the fear of insecurity. We don't scamper for security all the time. I'm not worried about security. And maybe the first moment when there's some security. In what? In not grabbing or grasping for it. And therefore being with this moment in its fullness, in its wholeness. We will end here for today.